What's up, Zach here? And yes, I went into the belly of the beast to get the Shaq Speed Demon mid for only $39.95, I might add. And just hear me out on them. You might change your mind about going into Kohls to buy sneakers at the end of this video. Or maybe not. Let's get into them. Now, Shaq has said when he came up with this idea for these shoes that he wanted to get a shoe that anybody could afford to get into a pretty decent category of basketball shoe without having to pay an arm and a leg. And honestly, I really think he accomplished this. There are definitely some cheap parts of this shoe. You can tell where the shoe is $39.95 in some aspects. And in other aspects, it is better than shoes, 4 or 5 times its price. Now, let's start with the uppers. What I thought was the most interesting part of the uppers was how difficult it was to get through the forefoot when I was cutting through them. I know this is just pleather, but it's a lot of material. It's actually pretty substantial. Then the woven mesh on both sides of it, that is kind of like a blend of TPU and textile you can see on the microscope. And then as you go further proximal into the shoe, you get stitched in pleather reinforcement. You get a little bit more jersey material, more of that woven mesh than more of the fake leather that goes back there. There is enough reinforcement in this upper though. I mean, it is not lacking in foxing and reinforcement. What is lacking though is padding in the heel counter. I did notice in these versus some others, I actually did have a little bit of break-in on these in the heel counter, in terms of like just rubbing against my Achilles. If I wore 2 socks or thicker socks, it was much better, and it did break in. And interestingly enough, I bought a pair for my kid 2 months ago as well to see how they would do in terms of a kid beating them up. That was his complaint too at first, that it had a little bit of irritation on his Achilles. After a day or two, he was fine with them. And now overall, with the handful of shoes he does have, he finds these the most comfortable, which I thought was pretty interesting. But speaking of that padding, when you go into the tongue, you can actually see it is 2 layers of foam. It's not the thickest tongue in the world, but I didn't have any lace irritation with these at all. And then as you can see, there's no gusset on it, but it does have lace loops going all the way through the tongue. So the laces do integrate with the tongue, so the tongue does not move around. It's a very simple way and cheap way to get the tongue to stay put, right? No, you're not getting the containment of a gusseted tongue, but for an extreme budget shoe, there's a lot of other shoes that do not have lace loops and the tongue's moving everywhere. It's a simple and cheap fix that I do like that was utilized in here. It is a combination of integrated and external lace eyelets. The one thing I would worry about is these external lace eyelets pulling. That'd be the one piece of this lace line that I'd just be a little bit concerned about in terms of, 3, 4, 5 months down the road. In terms of heel slippage, mild to none, because there isn't a ton of padding in there. You do get a little bit of movement, and that's also where you can get, like I said, a little bit of irritation on your Achilles. Like I said, I found that, a thicker pair of socks, double socks takes care of that. And once they broke in, didn't really have a problem. Heel slippage was still mild, but I didn't have a problem in terms of irritation. Now these things on the breathability test, kind of what you would think. They did heat up 118.9 degrees. I mean, there's a lot of material. There's not a lot of breathing channels through the uppers. The back paneling, or like the underside paneling of the uppers, is just pretty standard, right? There's not a lot of porous holes in there. Like I said, it's not uncomfortable. The material is comfortable enough, but just don't expect a ton of heat egress or moisture egress as you've seen on the breathability mapping. Really fog's coming out of both sides of the tongue, but just nothing in the forefoot, even if I gave it a little bit of time. There's really nothing coming out of there. Now, speaking of that forefoot, look at this thing on the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. And yeah, I mean, the burr gets through the pleather, and then it also starts to rip through the TPU, woven yarn in there. So honestly, I think that this pleather is gonna do much better in terms of blunt containment side to side versus, what could it do in terms of dragging or sliding. I think dragging or sliding on both an indoor court and an outdoor court might make these things look a little bit weird, so just make sure you watch out for that. All right, but getting into the midsole teardown, not only is it visually nice looking, it's got a top-loaded shank on a $39 shoe. Now, the entire bed of midsole foam in these things is just an entire bed of EVA. It's pretty dense, but honestly, also a little bit more cookie dough feeling. Like it's not an uncomfortable feeling EVA at all. It actually feels pretty decent underfoot. And like I said, the insole on these things is nothing, right? So you're actually feeling the midsole foam, which is really nice. So not uncomfortable by any means. Look at this on the bounce height test. Got 29 centimeters in the rear foot, 30 in the forefoot. So yeah, I mean, it's not the worst bounce height I've ever seen. I found that these were best when you're actually moving in them, activating them, using it for the shock absorbing capabilities that EVA does have. No, it's not the way of weight 11 in terms of explosive diving board feeling underfoot and having all that really, explosive thermoplastic foam underneath of you, but they do feel cushioned enough, and the shank provides enough structure and stability in the shoe where it doesn't feel like a brick going up for layups over and over again, right? It does not, and it honestly doesn't feel bottom heavy either. So it just shows you don't need to spend an arm and a leg on a shoe shoe to get pretty well-functioning features in a midsole. All right, but getting into the outsole tread, it is just differing pods of herringbone with some breakpoints for bending in the forefoot. It is broken up by a little bit of a stiffer piece of rubber here on the outsole of the shoe. Almost acts as a little bit more of a support truss, which is nice. Rear foot, you do get more pods of herringbone. And these don't slip on the grip test ramp until 36 degrees. The initial grip on these things, not bad at all. They do pick up dust though, I will say that. But a quick wipe down returns them to pretty decent grip. Look at these things on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, not even a millimeter of damage, which is crazy. The durometer comes in at 16.7, which, you know, it's not bad. I do think these make decent outdoor shoes just because of what you get for the price. You could buy 2 of them, right? Go beat them up over a summer, right? You probably will beat them up, you know, just from dragging and sliding, that kind of stuff. Okay, it is just basic EVA, so that might start to break down a little bit. The uppers are gonna start to break down. But, you know, honestly, these aren't the worst shoes I've tested either, which is really nice. I look at these things on the speed ratio. They do come in at a 2.04 shank score of 0.2, very nice. Brings it up to a 2.24. And yeah, I think that's, you know, where they belong. They're pretty just middle of the road. I'd expect them to get a little bit more dull feeling as the EVA, you know, breaks and gets more dull, but there is a top-loaded shank, so you are gonna load share, right? So you're not just gonna pummel through it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, in terms of speed, they're pretty middle of the road. I think in terms of stopping power, they definitely aren't the best out there because the flange isn't too wide and there is a little bit more of an angle of ascent that starts more at the metatarsals. So when you're flat to the ground, they're fine, but when you're up on the balls of your foot, or maybe if you're stomping on someone, if you're not in an ideal position, that's where I could see these things having a little bit more instability. Like I said, the stopping power is okay, just because there's just a lot in the shoe. But I just noticed in terms of really confident side-to-side movement, these weren't my favorites. But in terms of going north to south, yeah, just fine. And in terms of the fit of the Speed Demon, they do have a 14-degree inflare, so that is getting up there a little bit. 28.8 centimeters in length, 9.7 centimeters of metatarsal width, 10.5 centimeters of toe box width, and a toe box taper of 28 degrees. It is kind of just a standard last. There doesn't seem to be much bespoke in this last of the shoe. However, it is wide enough. I had 0 cramping in terms of my metatarsals, 0 break-in in the forefoot. It does have a pretty decent inflare and taper, so if you're concerned about that, like I said, it is a little more of just a traditional standard last. Let's say if you're a narrow foot, you can go down a half size in these things, just a little more weight reduction, a little bit more of a glove-like fit, and maybe not get as much, you know, just irritation in the Achilles. A medium, I think, is dealer's choice. You can go down a half size if you want that weight reduction, if you want more room in the toe box, and just stay true to size. A 2E, I go true to size of 4E. Honestly, I try to break them in true to size if you want to go up 1/2 size on these things. I think that's honestly fine too. The materials, like I said, in the forefoot, they do break in decent enough. And you know, in terms of people that I would, you know, recommend these for, I'd say really anybody who's more budget conscious, wants to be able to fit an orthotic in their shoes, right? Wants a mid top, someone who isn't really concerned about a ton of hard side to side cutting. You know, the name on the box kind of says it all. You're spending most of your time going north to south. You're not trying to create a ton of space or trying to, you know, create a lot of quick footwork. I think those are the people that are really going to enjoy these things. And like I said, with an orthotic in these, they're really not bad for most things. I mean, honestly, I think the only thing that I really wouldn't love these for would be like 5th toe hammer toes, right? Just because it might start pushing on there. People that have corns between their toes, those would be the people I'd be a little bit dubious for these for, or people that have chronic ankle spraining conditions. I wouldn't say that these are the most terrible shoes out there for ankle sprainers, but there are just better out there, I think, if you're concerned about ankle spraining. Like I said, if you're concerned about, you know, do I need this shoe to really hold up if I'm putting a ton of body weight going side to side? Other than that, though, you know, these are, in terms of the budget category of shoes, I mean, really, for what you get out of them, it is fantastic. And with my kid in these things, I forgot to talk about this. He's had them now for 2 months, and the only thing that has gone on them has been the pull tab right on the back. And coincidentally, that's what went on mine too. That's what kind of pulled out on mine. That has been the only issue with those. They're his #1 most comfortable shoes. It's the ones he always wants to put on before school. He loves them, said he wants to get another pair of them. They're super comfortable. So, I mean, especially if you've got #1, a kid who's just going through shoe sizes like crazy, that's also a really good thing. I know for us in our house, my kid's just going through shoes like crazy just because he's grown out of them so much. And, you know, this is such a nice pickup, right? It's just such an easy decision to make. So Love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. I'd love to know if I convinced you to walk into a Kohls and to pick these things up for yourself. I would love to know if you're actually gonna walk in. And if you do, tag me on Instagram. I'll leave my handle down here. Tag me on Instagram if you go in there. Like to start like a Kohls heads club or something like that. I think it'd be pretty funny. But honestly, kudos to Shaq for doing this. This is such, it's a testament, right? And I think it's also a proof of concept that it doesn't need to be super expensive to just give, like I said, basic, well-functioning shoes, to put out there. So loved, like I said, love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you want to see what's going on with another just ridiculously innovative shoe out there from Li Ning, the Ultralight 2025, which is just really blurring the lines between super shoes and basketball shoes, I'll leave that video linked right here. Make sure you subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam, and Kohls Cash. See you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.